Hello everyone, welcome to my oil painting session. And today we're going to paint the Isle of Skye and a tide coming in, slowly the water's coming over the rocks. So we'll be exploring some texture. We're going to use some transparent layers and some impactor strokes, so quite nice thick strokes with chunks of paint. So I'm using a grey background today to help me already offset loads of grays in the painting. However, I want to turn my piece into much more vibrant and bold in color, and also full of different texture and thickness of paint. Okay, so on my palette I have a group of cool colors and a group of warm colors. I have quite a bit of white, I have Payne's gray, and there is my cool colors: blue gray, cerulean blue, ultramarine, and emerald green or vermilion. Okay, and then I've got Naples yellow, ochre, magenta, or anything into pink. And then I have alizarin crimson, that's a bit more deeper red, violet, and as I said, Payne's grey there as well. Okay, I have a little piece of paper as well, just to test perhaps some colors. I have a thinner brush I'm going to start sketching with. Now you can play with the format of this photograph, and you can make it all a little bit more extra elongated, or you can make it a little bit more closer to not quite square, but maybe slightly wider. Depends how much sky or the rocks you want to bring in. I also would like, when I'm going to start sketching, there are lots of very simple shapes, so it will be quite an exciting piece to work quite freely. But I'd love to bring some of the blue mountains, some of the Cuillins, a little bit bolder, a little bit larger. So I went for a slightly wider piece here. Right, so I have some tubes here, and I have my oil here, which I'm just going to open the lids, and I'm going to start sketching. I'll use my thin synthetic brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of ultramarine, quite a watery paint, the ultramarine, and a little bit of Payne's grey. Now I want to see more blue than black in that. And it's going to be diluted. Okay, and let's find our horizon. So not maybe quite the horizon, but perhaps where that distant land is, separating the loch from the distance. So it's almost like a straight, well, it is a straight horizontal line. How much sky I want to leave, yeah, how much land I want to leave. So that's will give me a decision of how much of that space where that line is going to be. Now I said I want to have a little bit of extra sky and a little bit of extra mountains there. Okay. And again, just to confirm that that is where I want this line before I make any detailed drawings here, because that's quite an important compositional move. I'm going to decide on how much land is actually going to be there, or maybe I'll need to raise my horizon, so maybe that's going to be somewhere here. So try not to make too much details yet, because if you need to change anything, and you can adjust it as well as if you wanted to follow my plan. And I want to bring my mountains a little higher. So those blue mountains peeking through, I want them slightly bigger. They're quite a beautiful feature of the painting. Okay, and maybe this one. And again, once I've drawn them or kind of roughly sketched them, I might need to start thinking about maybe building up this section higher. So I'm not a photographer. I'm deciding on my own composition and my own layout. And that's something we can stay creative about. If you want to make your own decision at this stage, that's lovely as well. Trust your gut with planning it. And something you want to amend, just use a little bit of tabs to wipe the shape down. Right, I might just make it's quite a proper slopey shape. I might consider keeping it lower and then maybe keeping it higher there. Flatter or something, yes. Just don't want a continuous boring line going monotonously up. I want a little bit more of a variety. Okay. Now we can make those decisions on a separate piece of paper, but sometimes it's quite nice to play and make kind of work within the size and make those decisions in the size as you already have your surface here. That's better. I might make these ones a little bit more pointy. Again, I'm just amending, checking as they're my feature silhouettes. Have I got enough space for them? And I can work into some lower clouds. Okay. I think that's will work for me. So instead of a straightish line, I went for a bit more steps. And I think that will work into different layers of colors here as well. I think that's will be quite nice. Okay. And let's have a look now at the lower part behind kind of that line, separating the land from the lock. So a tiny bit more paint as I'm running out. And let's find perhaps the some of the more striking shapes. So the top part of this rock, we have a very direct, bold shaped, yeah, kind of a little bit diagonal coming up. Okay. And then we have a group of very small, much more smaller, but lighter rocks somewhere here. So then we can look for the water line. So maybe that is an important feature and that is important heavy feature. So lawn feature, big bulky feature. So a lawn feature will kind of somehow will come in here. So I'm looking for that dramatic entrance for it. And the bulky feature is going to be somewhere here. Okay. So if I'll just draw something bulky, not even interested in the shapes of the rocks, they outline what I'm trying to say. And then within that shape, or within that big lawn feature, we can then come around and look for how much water we can still see or we want to see. Okay, so that's going to stay maybe the rock. And it's going to overlap perhaps a little bit more. So that's quite nice that it's not seeing all of that water through, but it just touches it. And then how these pointy features of this lawn structure. Yeah, and the tide is slowly coming, slowly flooding the area. But those dark shadows will remain somewhere here. You don't have to shade them, but just I'm going to just do it just gently just to show that's the end of it. Sometimes shapes are easier to see than lines. Okay. Then I'll look for a silhouette of the water, maybe a little light touching the borders here. Looks like there's a little pool here. Maybe I'll have a couple of independent rocks here, and maybe open up this area a little bit more for the water. A couple of shadows on the rocks somewhere here. Again, I'm looking for very big shapes. Something here, and probably following a similar diagonal. Perhaps there's something going to be going here. Now have a think of this feature. Or it's need to come off the page. I'm comparing it with the feature above, yeah? So similar, probably directions, how certain rocks come up because of the structural, excuse me, tectonic structures, yeah, how the rock's been spread. So maybe a similar direction or similar diagonal will be present in there. I think I might make it. I'll leave it on its own like that. It could be all left or taken off the painting. Let's see. I think I quite like it out of the picture for now. Okay, so quite a simple sketch really. But what I have done, I've made a feature out of my background, and I simplified more shapes at the front. Right, now we've got the drawing. I picked up a range of brushes which will help us to get different thinness and thickness of layers build up. We'll start with using a flat soft brush. I've got extra long bristles on it, so I can just apply some oil with it, a very oily surface, okay? And then I have a range of filbert brushes. I'd love us to start painting with more transparent layers. So I'm going to use my flat brush first, and I have some oil here, and I'll apply it on land. So I'll leave the sky out for the moment, but I'll apply it mainly for land. I'll keep the mountains because they will have more opaque surface, and I'm planning the surface for more transparent layers. So I'm going to go for the land at the back. Now, if the oil will run further than where we want it, it's okay, but we might tidy it up. So I'm going to keep the water, this area for the water clean without any oil for the moment. And some oil over here. Now you can go over the lines, and if they dilute and run down as well, it's fine. Okay, and I'm going to use all of the front here as well. Now you can vary your strokes of oil with a little bit more extra moisture there, or a little bit more just so it stays just gently damp. And it will be quite nice for us to see that change in varieties as well. So it doesn't have to be all super runny. If it runs, it's absolutely fine. Like this one started to run for me here, but I might just persuade it to stay within that big shape. Sometimes it's really nice on plein air to paint most of our surface with a bit of oil. keeps it nice and soft. Okay, and as I run out, I'm going to top up my oil for my jar. Right, so once we apply the oil, I'm going to now use a clean brush, maybe a medium to small, well, medium size. So let me pick up a slightly bigger one. A medium size brush. Put some oil on it. And I would love us to pick up some warm colors, starting from, let's say, our magenta. So there is no white, just the color, diluted. Okay. And I'm going to look for anything what might appear in a little bit more warmer into my rocks. Now, it will look very bold and strong, and I just want you to be with me for the moment. Part of it we might keep quite bold. Part of it will be softened in color eventually. Okay, I might not put the bold magenta, the back mountains. I might neutralize that color or similar red later. But I'm looking for other nice, perhaps something that rock here. And what I'm doing already intuitively, I have smaller strokes at the back, perhaps even narrower, slightly wider coming close, and they're getting slightly bigger, even closer here. So I'm almost following the shapes of the rocks without painting the individual rocks. So loads of those exciting rocks here as well. So don't be scared of keep adding a little bit of extra oil so you can still see the gray underneath of your pink strokes, magenta strokes. Scared of painting off the page. If some layers will be very transparent and some a little bit more thicker, that's fine as well. Okay, and now probably will bring a little bit more. A little bit more color here as well. Bold and strong. If paint is mixed together with our ultramarine and Payne's gray, that's fine as well. Let it be. If it stays fresh, that's good as well. Okay. Next, I'm going to do the same, but with violet. So a bit of oil and some diluted violet. Violet mainly need more into lighter tones, so don't go too dark with it. We want to see that violet present as a color. It's almost as if we're painting a field full of flowers at the moment. And excuse me, try using different types of strokes. Because it's quite an oily consistency, it's harder to leave the paint on the surface as it runs away from us. So perhaps try to kind of maybe squeeze the paint by pressing on it, maybe by pressing and lifting, and kind of any of those lovely, exciting runny strokes might give us an opportunity to preserve some of the color. You can have some maybe almost shading strokes, and again that's perhaps will partially remain there, but I'm looking for a group of shadow, kind of probably group of rocks under seaweed or under some sea soil, salty soil, which gets flooded. Okay. Maybe a little bit of something here. Okay. I'm going to just wipe my brush. I don't need to wash it. And I'm going to load it now with some ultramarine. Same principle. Maybe if your paint is too runny, maybe have a little bit less oil as long as it's transparent. If you've been putting too thick, maybe the opposite, maybe just soften it down so it still have that runny feel for it. And I'm going to put a little bit of that fresh blue over maybe at the top here. There will be some nice shadows. And again, this is more blocking and it's more preparing what we're going to be doing afterwards. It's a nice cool shadow somewhere here. So it's in somewhere in this area. I'm going to just add a little bit of extra blue. Doesn't mean that it will stay exactly as it is, maybe even hardly as it is. Partially it will stay, but it will play its part. Okay, it's a nice cool shadow somewhere here. I think that's the reason why I wanted to have the water, this kind of area for the water to stay oil free, so it's not running, keeps our shape a little bit more consistent. Okay, anything a bit more here. Anything a little bit more. So it's kind of broken, but at the same time, I'm trying to look for some of the coolness within the area here. I haven't forgotten about the land behind, but I want to have it less transparent, so I'm gonna hold fire there for a little bit longer. Okay. Another color. We're going to mix violet, a diluted Morenia violet, with a small dab of ochre. Now, ochre has the properties of white, well, partially. It becomes less transparent, but it's still there because it's reasonably dark. And I'm going to paint the surfaces, almost like thinking these lovely pinks, vertical rocky areas or certain shadows, when this ochre and violet's a little bit more flatter surface, where some of the elements of the grass is going to be certain flatter lit up areas. So my strokes are a little bit more flatter, a bit more almost summarizing the whole area together, separating one surface from another. Again, there's still loads of transparencies, that's all fine. Quite bold and strong. And now we're ready for the background mountains. Again, I'll stay with violet and perhaps magenta, and I will use a little bit of white. So we'll start have a slight, like we were using with ochre, slight opaque quality to the color of the paint. That lovely paler pink. Or it can have more violet with a dab of white. Okay, and if I wanted a little bit of ultramarine, again, just a small amount of white and diluted ultramarine. Just check how light that is. That's quite light, so maybe a little bit darker. Now, I don't want it to be fresh blue. I want the fresh blue to stay from ultramarine to stay for the mountains at the back, the Cuillins. So I'm going to add a dab of ochre with it as well. So it's slightly chalky type of color. So it's more of a grayish blue than fresh ultramarine as we had it earlier. But it gives me the darkness and it gives me the compatibility with these purples at the back. If it becomes green, maybe you've gone too far into the ochre, so just add a little bit more extra blue or even a dab of or purple or violet just to cool it off. So we're looking for more grayish blue than we don't want green. It's very soft. Okay, so it still looks quite playful and bold in color. That's good. Right, next step, we're going to leave all these runny strokes where they are, and we're going to work on the sky, a little bit similar, but with more opaque colors, and we'll start building up thinner layers and thicker layers within that kind of closer period at the same time. So I have a larger filbert brush now, and I'll do the same what I've done with my other flat brush. I'll just add some oil to part of the surface of my sky because I want to put some clouds. So maybe the top part of the sky, I'll have some of them runnier areas, but I'm going to do them almost like if I'm painting clouds, the fluffy clouds. So I don't want it to run too far low, but mainly for my paint to soften nicely. And I'll start with using some blue gray. And if I were to check it against my board, that would be quite light. I want to find some shadows on my clouds first. So the color I've used for the mountain here, so ultramarine and a bit of ochre and a bit of violet, or even ultramarine and a little bit of Payne's gray is fine as well. So I think I'm gonna go for some ultramarine and Payne's gray, which is quite a dark color, and I mainly want to see blue rather than gray than black. And if I use blue-gray or some white, it will just make it a bit lighter together. So we don't want it to be super dark. Okay, and again, if I were to test it against my surface, that's probably the darkness we want. So it's runnier but opaque paint. It will be partially transparent because the strokes, the kind of the oil will separate within the strokes and will give us that little bit of extra transparency. So I'm going to go for some scooping strokes to look for the shadows under the clouds, or how some of the shadows will be developing. Now don't be scared of making some larger strokes, because we will be using other colors shortly to in between. Maybe something a little bit lower here. Don't be scared of painting over our mountains. We know where they are, and we'll come back to them with a little bit more stronger color later. Okay, I think that was quite nice to add a little bit of darkness there as well. And now I'm going to wipe my brush. I don't have to clean it, but definitely wipe it and get most of the moisture and darkness out of it. And then I'm going to load it with some oil and the blue-gray. So if you don't have blue-gray, just add a bit more extra white with the color you just had. And I want to play again the same game of softer, transparent layer, filling up all the areas here. Maybe less runnier than what we have at the base. So it's this blue-gray is mixing really well with my darker gray, the ultramarine and Payne's gray. Okay. Where I haven't applied oil, so that's kind of below some of these shadows, the paint goes in much more easily. It probably will stay there more or less in those shapes. When the top areas, it stays soft and probably will run. Okay. You can try placing loading less oil on your brush, so you have slight variety of softer strokes. Well, all strokes will be soft, some will be more runnier, and you'll be less in control with them, and some will be a little bit more sharper, and there will be stain there. Okay, and I'm going to finish this area as well, just fill it up on where my runny soft oils are. We're quite a moody sky immediately. Now try not to overpaint it. By that I mean don't go over everything where you've done your darker strokes earlier. Too much. Borders of them are fine, but try not to go over too much, because they will start being muddied up. And that transparency will slowly start going. So almost like whispery strokes. Okay. And then I'm ready to introduce my blue-gray more solidly. So if I don't use any oil, just put it on the side of my palette so I can load my brush well with it. So no oil on my brush at all now. Well, I didn't load extra. Whatever was left on the brush, that was enough. I'm going to bring some of the strokes a little thicker. So they might appear slightly lighter, might not, but that thickness and consistency is very different. So I'm just going to put a little bit of it in few areas so I can have that control and a little bit of extra detail. I think I might put something here. And every other stroke I'll top up that thickness of paint, and it's quite nice how it slides, and that surface is incredibly exciting. I'm looking for variety, perhaps a little bit variety of directions, a little bit variety of what's happening in them. I think I'm ready for a little bit of other color. So if I wipe my brush, eventually I want to touch it up with a little bit of Napoli's yellow, but I'm going to start with a bit of white. So I wipe my brush and I'm going to mix my white with tiny bit of the gray blue without any oil. So it's quite a thick paste. So it's just not perfect white, but a little bit off white. Okay. Let's find a couple of areas where we might want to have that boldness. I think I can see some of that boldness next to my mountain somewhere here, where that light will just be beaming immediately. Might make it a little further into the shape of my mountain so I can paint over it. And then to blend it, if you wipe your brush off and just use the borders just to soften it a little. Partially it will kind of run and create extra softness. Just watch the strokes directions there. And then I'll do the same lighter blue, quite thick, and find a few places on my clouds. Maybe these runny clouds will work quite nicely. Just putting a stroke, sometimes kind of rubbing that stroke in, making kind of sure it stays. If I'll just do one, it just might not quite leave me there, might not leave the chunk of paint in there. Let's put a smaller quantity somewhere here. Let's maybe look at the shapes of the dabby strokes. Let's see where else that light is traveling, softening. Maybe a little bit more light. Maybe not as bold as I've done on left-hand side, but maybe a little similar effect of light coming close to the mountain. Eventually we'll have in blue. I've actually virtually painted over my mountain, which I will bring back later. Maybe a dab of light here. So we've got something moving. The storm is moving. It's alive. Things are changing shape. Might again come back to solid blue-gray. I think that shadow is quite deep. I need something in between, so maybe I'll put something else here. That's better, so that doesn't look like a volcano with the steam coming out of it. Maybe a tiny bit more light for me for the sky. perhaps somewhere here, just a little connection. And stepping away and looking at it. Just that shape. Slightly calmer. Yeah, that's good. So it's suddenly very three-dimensional effect, quite powerful build up. Right, so now we have some opaque colors on the sky. Let's use similar colors for the water, for the lock. Now, this time I'm not going to put too much oil. I will put a little bit to soften kind of the application of the paint, but not overly runny. So my blue-gray is going to come in. And I'm going to block it more or less even first, and then we'll amend the colors afterwards. We'll amend the darkness, we'll amend. So it's not super thick layer, but it is not transparent. And we can work into the line of a shore. If it becomes too dry brushing, like just add a little bit more oil. Okay. The reason I said not too much oil, because I don't want it to run into our lovely shore colors. But also the different consistency paint against very soft, runny consistency paint. It almost like hugs it differently when we come close to the borders. Almost give it fresh cut out feel. Right, let's make this horizon straight. Okay. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to slightly add a little bit of darkness or a little bit of light, a bit of both, to the water to make it less flat. So perhaps my ultramarine blue, perhaps any of the grays you already have on your palette, or ultramarine blue and dab of Payne's gray. And if you need a little bit of extra oil just to make it smoother. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of darkness close to the distant shore. Doesn't have to be next to it, perfectly next in line. It's good to have a little gap in between. Now my gray is getting overwhelmed with the volume of light on the water, so I'm topping it up, making it slightly darker, so when I smudge it, it will remain still slightly darker. Okay. So somewhere there. Maybe there's a little bit reflections coming from the rocks here. So it's a little more like a milky surface, but with some of the water touching to becoming a bit more of a ripple here. Okay, not too much, not to overwork it. Now what I ended up with, I ended up dividing my water space here into two halves, which I don't like. So if there is something in division, it shouldn't be too perfect halfway through. So I'm going to remove one and move my darkness elsewhere. So remove this one. Maybe keep this darkness a little bit more higher up. Okay. It's more softness than too much texture. And I think I'll go for a little bit of extra light. Again, very small changes of it. Perhaps in the gaps here where we put the darks, but maybe not right in the middle. It's just suggestive light. Suggestive. It's not quite much ripple going on or overly powerful light. But I will put a little bit more light close to those bold clouds in light, so there will be something slightly lighter there. And perhaps we'll have a bit more sharpness close to us. So maybe in the little bay, in the little area here. And perhaps a tiny bit more here in the middle of that pool. Okay, I think that will be enough for me. Right, and now let's paint now our blue exciting mountains. I'm going to start with a little bit of oil, some white, and some cerulean blue. So that will be very, very probably light tone to what we want. I will want some ultramarine to get the strength, the darkness of the mountains, but almost like an inner glow. I'd love to bring that blue in there first. So maybe on right-hand side part of a slope. And my other mountain is going to be a little bit more here. I've lost its outline. Okay, nice glow. Can make it slightly darker as well. You can have both combination of light and dark. That's where I have hardly any white on my brush left. And then I'm gonna go for some ultramarine. Now ultramarine is much darker color, but we still need a tiny bit of white with it. So we want to change the color to more violet-like blue, which ultramarine is, but that we don't want it to be too dark. Now I left a little bit of my gray background at the bottom of the mountains because I want the ridge in front to stay darker. So I probably will soften it or do something what I've done here. I have a very pale border of the blue, but I want to find the ultramarine, perhaps some of the borders, some of the edges, the tops of the tops here. Okay. If you need a smaller brush or perhaps a square edge brush to have slightly more pointy corners for the perimeter, but you can do that. Okay. Again, I might help myself with paler color of the sky to get a sharp silhouette as well. So both ways, it works both ways. We can make the mountain work its silhouette, and we can make the sky to help us out. Now here I'm going to have a little more suggestive strokes as shapes behind perhaps the clouds. And the thicker paint we're using now, again, has a lovely qualities to it when it touches the softness of the background. I'm going to dilute my ultramarine, not dilute, mix with a bit of white to have extra lighter tone. Okay, that's too light perhaps. I want to have a border done. Mixing my blues together. Okay, tiny bit more lighter. I don't want it to look like as light as the sky behind. So let me see if I can stretch it. Okay, that's too light. Yeah, that's better. So it's got that glow. That range of blues is there. Might put another little peak somewhere here. I think in color it works better for me. And I need to touch up a tiny bit of the ridge of my left mountain, so I need to wash my brush and touch it up with the colors of the sky around it. So I'm washing the brush with some tips so it doesn't have glue left, because I quite like the size of the brush. And I'm going to load it with blue gray, perhaps a little bit more extra gray. I don't want it to be jumpy. I want to have a slightly sharper border here. A bit white. I think I'm smudging a little bit too much blue, so I want tone rather than color here. And let's just bring that softness over what I had here before. Clouds going over. Perhaps stand a bit more light. Because now I have the edges of my mountains, I can touch up that extra light with off-white. A little more in contrast. It's more exciting and good. Works here. And instead we're going to use a little bit of warmer color for the sky. So now we've got the mountains. We can gently touch up the clouds with some Naples yellow. So thick Naples yellow, just fresh one, with oil. So I'm not using any oil again with it, just the paints. If you don't have Naples yellow, just use some cadmium yellow with quite a lot of white. So it will be just enough white left. And I wanted to bring that light just under the clouds gently. It just has enough sunshine to come from under the clouds. And just that thick layer, just keep topping up that paint. If it gets mucky, if you're picking up some gray, just again load the brush with fresh combination of white and Naples yellow. And I think that will work really well if I'll bring it gently somewhere here. As the surface is very oily, I can just work my kind of way with those beautiful, smooth, slimy, you can say in a nice way, slimy stroke smooth. Okay, that's good. It's much more exciting. And again, the sky becomes even more three-dimensional. And again, that light could be transferred a tiny bit more on the water, perhaps close to some of our fresher whites on the water. Don't be scared of putting just a stroke and leaving it there quite chunky. Okay. I think the back looks even better. I think I might reduce the volume of the front. I think the distant light is better there for me. Just have a little bit of light here, but not too much. So if I were to lift it up and just show it to you a bit more close up. So that's on the water. You can see it just on the border. Can just about see it. Okay. Right, so now let's have a look back at the land. I'm going to start this time from the distant mountains. I think I'm more or less there with its darkness. What I will need to do is to find a little bit of light, perhaps some of them ochre-like shores, and also maybe a little bit of sharpness of the darkness, a little bit because it's distant ones. And then we'll work the same principle at the front, and maybe even more with even more thicker paint. So let's start with a dab of Naples yellow and some ochre. Okay, it's a fresh color, but because we already have quite a lot of dark layers, we almost need it to be fresher just than the result we're aiming for. I think I will go for a dab of magenta as well, just to soften that light. It's not going to compete with the color of the water, with the darkness of the water. Right, so I have a nice lit up shore somewhere here, and I don't have much oil on my brush, and that allows me to place the stroke and also change maybe its direction as I'm applying it. Maybe smudge it, maybe put something else, kind of work within my strokes a little bit more spontaneous as the light is traveling there. They might be creating some extra shadows, can press and have more solid opaque area, and I can kind of work its way around. So you can have it more flat, or you can have it more playful with combinations of those fabulous angles of strokes. So variety, that's what we're looking for. So it might be more exposed rock, it might be different type of rock. Okay, so that light is beautiful. I'm going to just gently change it. I'm going to make it a little bit more magenta-like. So it's not all the same on all the surfaces. I might just add a little more to it. Somewhere here. And on my left-hand side, sorry. Just a little more extra of that color. And I quite like to see some of it boldness, that again, that magenta, and maybe more Naples yellow, so that extra warmth. Perhaps on the border with my blue mountains, with my Cuillins. It's almost like a valley now, yeah. Just don't want it to be too symmetrical. Okay, let's put a little more fresher color there. Fresher light color. Okay. I'm happy with my lights, but what I'm discovering is the darks which are remaining. Sorry, just get myself covered in paint. The darks which are remaining here, I quite like them. This area, quite like the tops here, but I'm not sure I like their silhouette. So all I need to do is to get similar brown. That was my violet and ochre, perhaps a little bit of ultramarine. Brown and ochre will do for now, I think, for me. And just work into that shape slightly better. Maybe a blue stroke will come in. Just something I not quite like about that light valley. Just a little bit more there, that's better. Now it belongs to the mountain. Okay, that's better. Too much detail and the eyes getting too overwhelmed with the volume of information. So I'm just softening some of the detail there. I want part of it to be there, but I want it to remain, to be distant. So the lovely texture we've just been creating, maybe most of them need to be preserved for foreground. I'll just have a little extra darkness here, softened. Otherwise, again, it just takes too much attention. Okay, that's good. That's much better. Again, I'm constantly looking for little worms or little something which might be interrupting the surface, or looking too continuous line or too continuous shape. Now that's what I'm tweaking here. This is becoming too similar shape for too long distance. So if maybe it will be broken a little bit with a slope. And I'm looking for that information in my photograph. And I'm going to tidy the water so there is a nice sharper line. A little bit more sharper line here. Okay, I'm much happier with that one now. Good. And let's work with shapes at the front. But here we'll do similar thing, but we'll do a bit more bolder. But most importantly, we'll start working into those thicker strokes and kind of type of marks which will make more impact. So let's start with some of the darks. And I need some more ultramarine, and I have run out of it. Let's squeeze some more. So thick ultramarine. And I'm gonna go for some thick crimson, alizarin crimson. That will give you a stronger color than if I would have gone for Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey is great, and we will come back to it. But for the moment, let's go for alizarin crimson and ultramarine. Now, if I were to dilute it gently, I'll start having more a purple-looking color. But that's even a darker version of a purple. And let's look for some of these exciting shadows. Right, my paint all run out into the bristles, so I need actually more volume of it to be mixed. So then my big strokes will stay thick. Now I want to preserve some of my background colors, those one exciting shapes, but also I'm aware that big shadows are important. So if something disappears under my strokes, that's okay. Now some of these black areas are the seaweed shapes, kind of seaweed which colored some of the stones, stayed in it, and also partially it's the type of rock. So that violet, that solid violet, gives us an impression more of the seaweed presence. So we're gonna go almost blackish violet and blackish blue. So let's go for more ultramarine. I know you can't quite see it on my palette, but I just vary. From time to time we'll have ultramarine and alizarin crimson, and sometimes we'll just go quite a lot of ultramarine. And see how those strokes, I keep topping up the paint because once I've done a stroke, it stayed there and there isn't any more paint left on my brush. Okay, I don't want it to be too parallel here, so let's soften that one. So we're going dark, 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 and then we'll touch the highlights. This gorgeous shadow here. I might go for more ultramarine here. Ultramarine is a little lighter than that crimson or violet. So where I need it slightly stronger, I'll use the alizarin crimson mixture. And again, the beauty of mixing color rather than just using black is where we hit certain areas with a lot of oil underneath of our stroke. It becomes slightly transparent and we see the color better. Okay, I'm looking for some a little bit more intricate shadows, not overly precise, but somewhere in this corner, the bottom right corner, we have some darknesses. And I'll probably will break them down with highlights again later. So it's a pattern, a shape we're looking for. This shadow is a little bit less dramatic, so we can go with slightly diluted, kind of maybe don't load your brush as much, almost touch up your earlier strokes. Might even go for some fresh blue. So touched up some gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous darks. We want to probably add more darks close to us, but they're a little bit harder to do. What you can do, you can leave them all till the end, till we've done all our highlights and a bit more lighter tones, nuances, and then come back to some of them. Or if you were to wipe your brush, kind of squeeze all the paint out of it, which I've done a little bit earlier here, and then just so the brush has a very flat, pointy end, and then lift some of that squeezed paint just on the tip, and it's almost making a drawing with that brush. A little bit more precise shapes, or little, again, cracks, a little directions more than anything, maybe more cluster of those directions. The reason we're doing, well, I will be working more into them darker lines before I put the lights, is if some of those lines are too wide, it's easier for me to make them thinner by painting over them. I'll just get myself an easier way of working here. Okay, I think that's enough of my darks, at least for now. And as we've done earlier for distant land, now with a bigger brush, well, with my medium brush, not the smallest one, but not the tiny one, I'm loading it with a thick Naples yellow. Okay, so I'm just going to work the paint into the bristles and a little bit of white, and again a small dab of magenta. Okay, that's quite a lot of magenta. It means that I need more Naples yellow and more white. Okay, that proportion. Okay, maybe for this lower area of our painting, maybe we'll have more Naples yellow and white than magenta. We can vary that. If you want to use a bit of ochre and vary some of the strokes. So I'm looking for the rocks. Now, some of them have got a lot of white lichen. So perhaps it will be those rocks. Perhaps I can touch up the white as well if I wanted to. But I want to slowly start introducing that thick paint as individual strokes for some of these areas. Now they will start smudging, and that will give you some exciting texture, but not always. So look out what those thick strokes can give you. And occasionally, from time to time, just wipe that extra paint you're lifting and just bring some fresh paint on your brush. So look out for maybe exciting textures, maybe flat areas, maybe an unexpected kind of directions how the paint will start spreading. I will look for the shapes of the stones, so perhaps some will be flat and quite large. So again, I'll just wipe my brush here. Maybe some will be much smaller and grouped up here together. Maybe another long one. Again, I've got loads of paint on my brush. Maybe I'll wipe it off. Maybe I need some more fresh paint. Maybe I'll slightly change it to now more stronger ochre. So it's slightly darker and a slightly different in color. Okay, maybe even dab off my violet so that ochre is looking even deeper. It's still light against the surface, but slightly deeper. Otherwise, it just looked very golden here. Okay, that's quite nice. Again, just look out for the texture you leave in with your brush. If you like it, that's great. If it's too similar from one rock to another, maybe vary the direction. Maybe you want something flat. Maybe you want to work into different surfaces. Okay, maybe some of it will be combined. So I'm going to start blocking a little bit of this area here. Okay. Sometimes applying a stroke of thicker paint, let's say of our ochre, over a very dark area. Let's say I have a group of rocks here. If I put it right in the middle of the dark stroke, it almost looks like it's surrounded by dark. It almost gives it a shadow on the back straight away. Yeah, it creates that volume for me. Okay, close to the water. Maybe not as much white. Okay, maybe to continuous line, maybe I'll break that darkness line. Okay, and let's have a look. So that's nice and busy area, but let's have a look for any other highlights, maybe somewhere here. I can work with my brush kind of by semi moving the brush and mixing the layer of color underneath as I'm applying it. Okay. I'm happy to have slightly darker stroke. I continue, I'm not wiping the brush. If I want something fresher, I can wipe the brush and load it with a fresher stroke. So it's a big rock, but I'm not sure if I like it now. If I wanted to break it down, if I use a different brush and bring a darker color back. And because there's quite a lot of paint there, I need to dig to the bottom of the surface, almost lift that thick paint off, reintroduce the darkness I require or the color, and then paint over it with my light color again. I think it was the shape of the rock I wasn't too sure about. And keep mixing the paint. If you have too much marbling effect everywhere, it will become overpowering. And if it's busy somewhere in this area, I can start making it less busy going out. So it's a lot of warm colors as well. I'm going to slowly start going to a bit more cooler colors. So maybe some flatter surface. Okay, it's a bit of quite light, but I think by the time I mix it, it will settle gently. So that shoreline is softening. Okay, but it's glowing. Okay. There's some more, perhaps warmth in the back there. I wanted something a bit more lighter, warmer. In here. And I'll try bringing some cooler light. So I'll wipe my brush, but I'm not gonna clean it with tabs, just wipe it is enough. And I'll go for blue-gray, nice and thick blue-gray. And let's find some of the rocks in between our warm rocks, which will have almost like the end left-hand side of the rocks, like their base, the cooler side shadow. Again, maybe just a little edge, maybe just a little block. I'm gonna have something a bit more bigger here. There's maybe a shape. It's too hairy edges. Okay, I don't want hairy edges. I want a bit more something soft. And again, I can work with the strokes I've got rather than exact shapes of the rocks. The shapes of the rocks just allows us to understand the nature of it here. Okay, that's slowly happening. It's also links the water to some of our rocks and formations here. Perhaps darker, well, the water should be slightly lighter. Okay, because we were using more white and a bit more yellow, so it should be appearing a bit more lighter. Right, and a little bit more coolness. Okay, a little bit too light for me. Looks into that darkness too light, so let's bring it a little more coolness. So shadows partially disappearing, but they're still there. I don't want this rock a little higher. I actually quite like it being sharper, so let it be there for a moment. Maybe I'll come back to that lighter rock. So it's very easy to go over and our shadows because they're quite thinly painted. They're powerful, but they're thin. So the thicker layer of the light tone will quite happily get rid of them. So be careful if you want to preserve some of the darks. Okay, let's leave it at that for the moment. Okay, back to my grey blue, sorry, blue grey. And a little bit calmer area here. So perhaps some of the strokes we had earlier going flatter. So this gently mixing with our paler color. At the same time, they're still preserving part of that light. A little bit of some of the stones might be coming here. Maybe not as bold, but those pinks are still here. It's almost like a rich surface of lost treasure, yeah, in nature. A treasure of colors, of light, especially when the surface is wet after the rain or the shore was damp. Just tweaking some of the directions of the lines so they're not too parallel. Get a little bit more of that coolness. Perhaps supporting my, again, direction of this dramatic diagonal. Gently mixing the colors from the background, but having an opportunity to keep them as well. Again, very much individual work because it depends on what colors and thickness and the layers you had. You'll have similar impact, but very independent work. So to copy a piece will be hardly impossible, unlikely possible, because of those accidents, because of those because of the technique. Copy the technique, and that's what we want. Right, so it's nice busy area here for me. Let's combine it with a couple of maybe individual stones in this area. Maybe not too many, but something. Okay, and if I need to put a little bit of highlights again of that Napoli's yellow and white, I can do that. I'm just double checking other areas for the stones. That's quite good. Maybe a little bit of calm or something here. Perhaps it's a nice dark shadow on this rock, but it's too solid. But if I make it more transparent by lifting some of the dark, that's much more exciting shadow then. That's good. Right, I think I'm almost there. Just do a couple of more highlights. Again, I need to have a clean brush for it. So some tips to get the blue and gray off. And some strong, thick white and Napoli's yellow or cadmium yellow, just very small amount of it, a lot of yellow, sorry, instead of a lot of white. And we also had some ochre, so a bit of both. So perhaps touch up of ochre a little first. Don't want this light of ochre traveling too far into the painting. I want it to stay somewhere here. So maybe a lit up area. Right, I think I need a dab of violet with it. It's too bright, the ochre, even the ochre. A little bit of softness, of warmth. A tiny bit more lighter, maybe not as dark. Again, everything is need to be compared. Again, perhaps on this side, on the left-hand side of the painting, it's going to be the right-hand side of the rocks where you'll be touching things up. That light is just gently coming through, that warmth. Okay, now I'm ready for the bold white and Napoli's yellow, or even bolder with a dab of ochre. So just a little touch up, and again, where I'm going to pepper it. Don't want to do every stone. Okay, I did like it here. And vary the size of the strokes. If they're becoming too similar, even different colors strokes, but the strokes are too similar, just be careful, pay attention to that. It's okay to a certain extent because the rocks have a lot of similarity within their shape, but if there is a little more highlight or a little bit more of a line, a little bit more of a dab, and then they're all round, then that will be even better. Okay, that's it in there, and slightly more light. I want to lit up that area. And somewhere here is it turning away. So again, that thick layer is wonderful. It just left on a thinner volume as a stroke, or quite a big chunky. Okay, that's a lovely thin line there. Okay, little full stop. It's quite exciting. Right, I've got another line, just a gentle line, which is coming to my attention here. The back, otherwise I think I'm all finished. Just a little nuance. Like that dark coming through. How much dark? A nice chunky stroke. It's good. Just be getting careful that that's becoming too repetitive, or has it got enough support? That light and dark. Perhaps a little support of light on this side will be. That's it. I think that will be enough. That's quite nice and exciting. So, checking any of the light on a painting. Can we do anything else, or is it enough? If it feels like we can just charge something else up, let's say somewhere here with a bit of light and something tiny bit with a shadow, that's what I was saying, just hold on fire till the end of the distant connections of shadows. And light, I think that would be quite nice. Just get rid of this unruly stroke coming out. And we've got slightly stronger contrast and slightly more tension at the back. Maybe a little more tension somewhere here for the shoreline as well. And I'll double check my flatness of the water at the back. So we want to have a straight line. We don't want to have a wobble. There's a bit of a wobble here as well. And we're done. So we've got some exciting shadows, much more fabulous and wonderful colors than we might have seen in the photograph. Loads of beautiful contrasts, playful light, thick strokes and thin strokes, but that combination of runny, oily strokes and surfaces with the impact, thick strokes. That's what makes the whole piece very beautiful and exciting. So thank you very, very much for today. I hope you're having fun. And at any point, if you feel it's too much thick paint, Don't be scared of taking it off or even lifting it off and kind of repeating the process. Well done.